So far, we've gone over 40 prospects at the wide receiver position and the edge position and tied them to what the Packers typically draft in regards to their thresholds. Narrowing down a list of 40 prospects to around 4 to 7 prospects based on what the Packers like in the draft. So since we already did wide receiver and edge, two positions of need for the Green Bay Packers, I figured let's go ahead and do cornerback, and let's go over the top 40 cornerback prospects in the upcoming NFL draft and see what the Packers are looking at in regards to what they typically draft for an outside cornerback. And I say outside cornerback because that seems like what the Packers will be targeting. They added Nate Hobbs in free agency. They already have Javon Bullard. They even have Kalen King, who I think is a nickel corner at the NFL level. So they have plenty of nickel options. And I didn't even mention Keyshawn Nixon, who mainly played nickel until this past season. So I think if the Packers are going to add a corner or two in this draft class, it's one going to be a guy that can play majority outside. And if they add a second one, maybe a versatile player at that. And again, it also all comes down to if the Packers keep Jaire Alexander or not. We saw earlier this offseason, it seemed like it was in writing that the Packers will be moving on from Jaire Alexander, whether that's through a trade or cutting him. But more recently, it's starting to trend the opposite direction. We saw Jaire congratulate Nate Hobbs when the Packers signed him. And then yesterday, we see Jaire working out with Xavier McKinney. McKinney posted a video on Instagram working out with Jaire Alexander, maybe signaling that the relationship isn't gone yet, that the Packers still could retain Jaire Alexander. But even if the Packers retain Jaire, I still think they need to go out and draft an outside cornerback, not only for depth reasons, but for insurance, right? Because Jaire, when healthy, one of the better corners in the NFL, but that's a big if. When healthy, right? So the Packers are going to need more depth at that outside cornerback position after losing Eric Stokes, Robert Rochelle, Corey Ballantyne, all of which played on the outside. So today, let's break down which cornerbacks fit the Packers thresholds in this upcoming draft. If this sort of thing does interest you, I'd really appreciate if you went down and clicked the like button. It takes hours to compile all of this data and tie it to the Green Bay Packers. Just trying to give you guys a comprehensive list of the players that you should be looking at for this upcoming draft. And of course, the Packers could draft someone that I list as not a Packers threshold fit for sure. But history and statistics show what the Packers like. Also, go down and click subscribe if you want to stay in the loop with everything Green Bay Packers this offseason. Much more draft content to come as we get closer and closer to the draft. Also, a big shout out to BetUS TV for sponsoring today's video. Guys, if you're looking for more sports content, go check out BetUS TV over there on YouTube. I linked their channel down in the description below for tons of sports content, betting content, all of the above. And they also have an account over on X. It's at BetUS TV. Again, big shout out to this channel's partner, BetUS TV. All right, so without further ado, let's dive right down into the video. And just like the prior two videos, first, let's go over all the cornerbacks drafted by Brian Gutekunst since he became GM in 2018. So showing you the list here up on the screen includes names such as Carrington Valentine, Kalen King, Eric Stokes, Shamar Jean-Charles, Kadar Holman, Jaire Alexander, and Josh Jackson. Now, the players in white are nickel corners. I think Kalen King, the Packers view him as a nickel corner, and you'll see that both nickel corners have lower RASs and are under their typical weight thresholds for an outside corner. So I think the Packers, right from the beginning, thought Kalen King would be a nickel corner at the NFL level, and that's why they didn't hold him to the same thresholds. But not only that, he was a 7th round pick, where as the draft goes on and it's later in the draft, sometimes the Packers are a little bit lighter on their thresholds if a player, say, is falling for sure. But Kalen King, Shamar Jean-Charles, the two slot cornerbacks here, and you can see vastly different from the rest of the cornerbacks, a lower RAS, especially with Shamar Jean-Charles. I mean, this guy made no sense when the Packers drafted him. It went against everything the Packers draft at cornerback. A below 5.0 RAS, a slower than a 4.50 40. The only thing he had was vertical there. But one thing you'll see at outside cornerback for the Green Bay Packers when Gutekunst drafts him is, man, he loves his athletes. And that's like every other position. It's crazy how consistently Gutekunst loves athletic players at certain position groups. We see Valentine, a 9.4 RAS. Eric Stokes, 9.37 RAS. Kadar Holman, 9.22 RAS. Jaire, 9.53. Josh Jackson, 9.26. Now, a few of these definitely didn't work out. Eric Stokes just signed with the Raiders. I didn't live up to that first round hype. Kadar Holman, I believe, was like a 6th rounder. He was a decent special teamer for a bit there. Josh Jackson, definitely a bust. I still don't know how Josh Jackson didn't work out. The film and what you saw from him coming out of Iowa was absurd. I just don't know how it didn't work out. Jair is also one that's a little bit of an outlier for outside cornerback. They typically love 6 foot. But they went down to 5'10 for Jair, and sometimes they just really like a prospect, but they went down to 5'10. But one thing that's consistent here for outside cornerbacks, they're all around 195 pounds and plus. Now, 40-yard time, at least for outside cornerbacks, outside of Josh Jackson, they typically like their cornerbacks to be decently fast, more so like a sub 4.5 40. And then, of course, considering they like athletes, they love cornerbacks with good verticals. And that's all the way across the board. We see every single corner here with a 35-inch vertical or greater. So with all that in mind, here's the Packers' threshold at outside cornerback for the draft. 5'10 or greater, typically 6 foot or greater, but they can stoop down to around 5'10 so long they have the weight to go with it. And that weight right now is at 193 pounds or greater. Now, of course, they could be 191 pounds, and I'm sure they would still be on the Packers board. But the one thing is clear is they're not going to stoop down to, like last year with Nate Wiggins, I think he was like 181 pounds or something of that sort. They're typically not going to draft very light cornerbacks. And then 9.0 plus RAS, typically a sub 4.5 40, and then always a 35 or greater inch vertical. All right, so now let's flip to the draft board. If you watched my prior 2 videos, you already be used to how this is all set up. But for anyone new that's just watching this cornerback video, go watch the other ones right after this one. But we have name, school, height and weight, outside or slot. So of course it matters, if this player is projected or played a ton of slot or outside at college. RAS, 40-yard time, vertical, Packers threshold. Let me widen that out there for you guys. Packers threshold fit, yes, maybe, or no, and what round they are projected in, and also if they've met with Green Bay so far. So the Packers have yet to meet with a cornerback in terms of a top 30 visit, but with all the other bowl games and everything in between and the combine, they actually have met with a decent amount of prospects. Let's go over those real quick. They met with Jade Barron, Trey Amos, Benjamin Morrison, Jacob Parrish, Kobe Bryant, Quincy Riley, Mac McWilliams, and BJ Adams. And then, of course, this whole thing is color-coded. So if they don't meet the height and weight requirements, they're going to be in red there. And if they meet certain requirements, it's going to be either green or blue. Orange is going to be very close, and red's going to be like not even close. All right, so first let's go over cornerbacks that I have as not a Packers threshold fit, and we'll explain why. First, we have Dorian Strong. He's 6'1", 185 pounds, a 7.03 RS. Now, he has the 40-yard time right at it, 4.5 40. He has the vertical at 36 inches. But he is below an 8.0 RAS, usually typically like their 9.0s, and he's a little bit on the lighter side. So Dorian Strong I have as a no. Noah Williams, now this is a guy I love. And this pained me to put no here, and I hope the Packers go against this, right? This isn't the end-all, be-all, set-in-stone chart that if I have a no for a player, the Packers will 100% not draft that player. I'm just going off the data. I'm going off the statistics. And honestly, I'd be happy if I'm wrong on this one because I really, really like Noah Williams, and I think if you can get him in the 3rd to 4th round, he's going to be a steal. Now, he fits the height and weight requirements, 6 foot, 199, but he doesn't fit the RAS, and it's close enough, so maybe I could put this to maybe, but I just put it as no because he doesn't have the RAS. He 7.01. He doesn't have vertical 33.5, and he's right at the mark for the 40-yard dash at 4.5 40. But the guy has a ton of ball production this past season for Cal. I think it's 7 interceptions. I hope the Packers have him on their board. We have Sebastian Castro. Now he's a slot corner. Typically, if they play slot, I have them listed as a no. Now that doesn't mean the Packers couldn't go out and draft a slot cornerback yet again. Do I think they will do that? No. Do I think they could get a guy that maybe played some slot, maybe played some outside at college ball? Yeah, 100%. Sebastian Castro is definitely a slot cornerback, and even at that, doesn't fit really any threshold for the Green Bay Packers. Slot corner, 5'11", 203, horrible RAS, 3.48, bad 40, 4.59, bad vertical, 30.5 inches, so I have him as a no. We also have Kobe Bryant from Kansas, 6 foot, 180. You can pretty much cross him off their list unless he somehow put on a bunch of weight. It's really light for the Packers liking, and has a a worse than 4.50 40 at 180 pounds. So I definitely have him as a no. Zy Alexander, he's someone that that I see a lot of people mocking to the Green Bay Packers, probably just because it's a last name Alexander. It's like, hey, why not, right? 6'1", 187 pounds, so a little bit on the lighter side. Very, very, very bad RAS. Tested really, really poorly. 3.38. Ran a 4.56 40 and a poor 31.5 inch vertical, so I have him as a no. The next two players are both slot players, and that's Upton Stout and Jordan Hancock from Ohio State. Upton Stout, shorter and lighter, 5'8", 181. Okay, RAS 7.51. If the Packers were looking for slot corners, Upton Stout may be on their radar. They typically don't hold the slot corners to the same RAS standards, but he also ran a 4.44 and a 37.5 inch vertical. But again, we're focusing on outside corners, so he's a no. Same with Jordan Hancock, who has the height and weight, but nothing else didn't test, and he's a slot guy, so I put him as no. O'Donnell Fortune from South Carolina, one of the lowest RAS graded guys in this class, 6'1", 185 pounds, a little bit light as well, 2.42 RAS, poor 40-yard time, poor vertical. Mello Dotson from Kansas, both of the Kansas corners I don't have as fits for the Packers. Now, he has the height and weight, 6'1", 192, but a poor athlete, 5.71. Pretty slow 40, 4.59, and not a great vertical at 34.5, even though that's very close. They like 35 inches, but tied with the low RAS, low 40 time, I have him as a no. Jabbar Muhammad from Oregon, 5'10", 182, short and light, and not a great athlete. Poor 40, very poor vertical. That's a no for the Packers. Elijah Huzzy from North Carolina. Now, he's a guy I think that can play outside, can play inside. 5'10", 192, so he's kind of like right on that mark, that Jair Alexander mark, but, he's a 5th to 6th round guy, so maybe the Packers wouldn't have him on their board. If he tested, this would be a lot more clear, so I just listed him as a no. Robert Longerbeam from Rutgers, 5'11", 175 pounds. Whew. Again, the Packers aren't going to be targeting lighter corners. He does play outside. He is a great athlete, 8.62, 4.39 40, 36.5 inch vertical, but that 175 pounds typically will remove you off the Packers cornerback board. Jalen Smith from USC, 5'10", 187, a little bit on the shorter side and the lighter side. This guy can also play inside, can play outside. Had a poor RAS, 4.72. Ran a 4.45 40 though, but had a low vertical, 32.5, so I have him as a no. Bilal Coney from Western Michigan, 6'1", 190 pounds, a little bit light, but close, very, very close. Outside guy, but not the best RAS, like lower than they typically like, 7.7 with a low vertical as well. Going over the last four no's, we have Jamari Harris from Iowa, and he's a guy I really liked. And when you watch him on film, you like this guy, but man, he tested so poorly. And I think honestly, a team might get a steal with Jamari Harris, where it's a guy that, hey, maybe didn't test too well athletically, but when you see him on the field, you're like, all right, this guy can play ball. 6 foot, 191 pounds, so kind of fits the Packers there. Has a great vertical at 37 inches, but man, he tested poorly, 3.6 RAS. So sadly, I have him as a no, but he was one of my later round steals, but he just didn't test well at all. BJ Adams from UCF, who they actually met with, 6'2", 182. Definitely on the lighter side there. Not a great athlete, 4.63 RAS. Not a great 40, not a great vertical. The final two, Shamari Simmons from Arizona State. He's a slot guy, also not a good athlete. And then finally, Marcus Harris from Cal, another slot guy, 5'11", 189 pounds. Didn't test or doesn't qualify for an RAS, but did run a 40-yard dash, 4.45. So if they were looking for a slot guy, Marcus Harris could be on their radar. All right, so now let's go over the maybe fits for the Green Bay Packers. First, we have Jahdae Barron from Texas, 5'11", 194 pounds. He can play inside, can play outside. A lot of people see him as just a slot guy. I think he can play both, and that's why I have him as a maybe, right? If the Packers view him purely as an outside guy, I think he's definitely on their radar. Will he last to pick 23? Probably not, but he still could be on their radar. Great athlete, good 40-yard, great vertical. Maxwell Harrison. Now, I have him as a maybe because he is listed RAS, or his athletic profile, as 5'11", 183 pounds. But about a week ago, he put out I think it was an Instagram story, that he bulked up to like 191 pounds. So if he's bulking up and if he's in that 190 plus range, I think he is on the Packers' radar because he's a tremendous athlete, 9.62, 4.28 40, the highest 40 on this entire list, and a great vertical, 39.5. Now, I'm not taking into consideration character concerns. Obviously, this is just from a player standpoint, a numbers, analytical, athletic standpoint. So I have him as a maybe. Azariah Thomas, 6'1", 197 pounds, fits that perfectly. The only thing that he doesn't fit for the Packers is the slower 40-yard time at 4.58, so I have him as a maybe. Jacob Parrish from Kansas State, a little bit on the shorter side, but does technically fit their thresholds, kind of like that Jair Alexander outlier threshold. Good athlete, good 40, good vertical, but because he's 5'10", 191, like really, really close, I put him as a maybe. Denzel Burke from Ohio State, a little bit on the lighter side, almost 6 foot, but 186 pounds. Maybe if he bulked up. I like him as a prospect. I think he's going to be a good prospect coming out of the 4th to 5th round there. Didn't qualify for RS, but did run a sub 4.5 40, so I have him as a maybe. Then we have Za Frazier out of Utah. I really, really like Za Frazier. And, he's so close to the weight, right? He's 6'3", 186, definitely lighter frame for 6'3", and you'd like to see him bulk up some weight there, but great athlete, 9.28, great 40, 4.36, great vertical, 36.5. So I do have him as a maybe just because of the weight. Tommy Hill from Nebraska, height and weight are fine, but didn't test, so we don't know 40, we don't know vertical, we don't know RS, so I have him as a maybe. Caleb Ransall from Tulane. Now, a lot of people think he's going to be a slot at the NFL level, which I agree, but he did play some outside corner in 2022, so I have it listed here. He's 5'11", 197, and a great athlete, runs a great 40, has a terrific vertical, so I think he could be a maybe for the Packers. Justin Wally out of Minnesota, an outside guy, right on that line of height and weight, but did run a good 40, so I'm as a maybe. Then we also have Mac McWilliams from UCF, a guy I really like late in this draft, a very versatile guy, can play outside, can play inside. 5'10", 191, again, really close on that height to weight. Decent athlete, 7'3", good 40, decent vertical, I'm as a maybe. Going over the final 3 maybes. Fentrell Cypress from FSU, 6 foot, but very, very light, 182 pounds. So if he bulked up, I could see him as a maybe because he's a good athlete, 8'5", good 40, great vertical. Then we have Isis Waxter from Villanova, 6'1", 209, great height and weight for the Packers, outside guy. Okay athlete, 7'4", but he's pretty slow, 4.56 40, but a good vertical, so I have him as a maybe. The final maybe is Marcus Siegel from Kansas State, 5'11", 199 pounds, so good on the height and weight. Is a slot guy this past season, but did play outside in 2022. Great athlete, 9.89, great 40, 4.37, great vertical. That's why I have him as a maybe for the Packers, just because of the tremendous athletic profile. Finally, let's go over all the yeses for the Green Bay Packers. Now, Will Johnson, in terms of height and weight, is a perfect fit for the Packers, outside guy. Now, obviously, he didn't test, so I have an asterisk next to yes. I do think he'd be on the Packers board, and if he falls to 18, 19, 20, potential trade-up opportunity for the Packers there. Siobhan Revell Jr., 6'2", 194. Again, perfect height and weight, and I think if he were able to test, he would have a good athletic profile. So I have him as a yes, but again, an asterisk there, just because we don't know the rest of the information. Trey Amos, man, this is a guy, and I'll explain why at the end of this video. Really does feel like a Green Bay Packer from Ole Miss. 6'1", 195 pounds, like fits that perfectly. Good athlete, right near a 9.0 RAS, good 40-yard. The only thing that is slightly lower is his vertical, but everything else is great, so I have him as a yes. Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame, obviously a little bit of injury concerns here, but in terms of height and weight, he does fit the Packers' thresholds, and I think he's going to be a good ball player, and someone's going to get a steal in the second round if he does fall to that point. I do have an asterisk, though, because of the injury, because of the lack of testing. Darian Porter, the most Packers-esque corner in terms of the athletic profile, 6'3", 195, had a 9.99 RAS, ran at 4.3 40 and a 36.5-inch vertical, so I have him as a capital yes. The next yes is Quincy Riley from Louisville, 5'11", 194 pounds, fits that threshold. Didn't qualify for an RAS, but did run a sub 4.5 40, so that's why I have him as a yes. Packers also met with him. He's a good candidate for a 4th-round corner. Jason Marshall Jr. out of Florida. Really like this guy. Great athletic profile. Maybe didn't play the best ball back in 2024, but a guy that maybe you snag in the later rounds, and you grow and he grows in your defense and becomes a solid corner for you. 6 foot, 194 pounds, great athletic profiles I mentioned, 9.37, 4.49 40, 37.5-inch vertical. And then the final two yeses. Not many yeses on this list. The Packers hold a tight operation in terms of their thresholds for sure. Jonathan Edwards out of Tulane, 6'1", 200 pounds, outside corner, 9.21 RS, 4.4 40, 38.5-inch vertical. Then I also included Katan Crawford because it's a late round guy. I think he played safety for Nevada, but I think he's a slot guy at the NFL level. Maybe the Packers add another slot guy later in this draft that can play some safety. So I just listed him as a yes because I also like him. 5'11", 202, and he's a great athlete. 9.7 RS, 4.4 140, and a 41.5-inch vertical. All right, so now with all those things considered, I took it a step further and I took all of the 100% fits and the maybe fits, and I added in their passer rating allowed, interceptions this past season, run defense grade, man coverage grade, and zone coverage grade. So first we'll start with the 100% fits. Will Johnson allowed a 52.6 passer rating, had 2 interceptions, run defense grade 73.7, man grade pretty poor 50.6, zone grade 75. Now I also have notes on the right because a lot of these corners didn't play too many games in 2024 due to injury. Will Johnson was one of them, only played in 6 games. Now Siobhan Ravel Jr. only played in 3 games, but had a tremendous 3 games, 48.8 passer rating allowed, 2 interceptions, run defense grade 70, man grade 75.3, zone grade 79.6. Trey Amos had a 54.5 passer rating allowed, had 3 interceptions, great run defense grade 81.0, man grade 75.4, zone grade 78.9. We also have Benjamin Morrison, who I talked about, only played in 6 games, 58.4 passer rating allowed, didn't have an interception though. Good run defense grade 76.9, man grade a little bit lower, 62.2, still above average, and zone grade a little higher than that, 64.7. We have Darian Porter from Iowa State, again the 9.99 RS. Allowed a 4.7 passer rating allowed this past season, which is crazy. And I believe it's his first year starting, so not a lot of snaps under his belt, but you saw the potential back in 2024, of course. 3 interceptions, run defense grade, his tackling was poor last year, 36.8. Man grade, he was a zone corner for the Iowa State defense. He had a 91.1 zone defense grade. Definitely translates to like a cover 3 corner at the NFL level. 63.5 man coverage grade. Quincy Riley, a lot of passer rating of 73, had 2 interceptions. Run defense, second lowest on this list, 40.2. Man grade, also pretty low, 52.7, and a decent zone grade, 67.9. Now, he only played in 10 games, and 2024 was much better. And we know how I say this all the time. The Packers love players that maybe didn't have a great prior year, but the year before that was much better. And Quincy Riley is definitely on that radar there. Jason Marshall Jr., definitely the worst passer rating allowed on this list, 119, didn't have an interception. Run defense grade was okay, 68.4. Good man grade, 74.7, but not poor zone grade, but lower zone grade, 68.4, but only played in 7 games. Jonathan Edwards out of Tulane, 61.9 passer rating allowed, didn't have an interception. Run grade okay, poor man grade, poor zone grade. Katan Crawford, who I talked about, probably a slot guy, but allowed a 47.4 passer rating allowed, and that's impressive because he was doing it at safety. 2 interceptions, run defense grade 66.3, man grade 78.3, and one of the highest zone grades on here, 82.8. Then going over the maybe fits, we're not going to go over every single one because that would just kind of get redundant here, but I'll go over some of the highlights. We have Jade Barron and also Za Frazier with the most interceptions on the maybe list. Za Frazier with 6, Jade Barron with 5. Some players with 0 interceptions this past season. Caleb Ransall, Fenchel Cypress, and Isis Waxer. Going over some notes from some of these players, Maxwell Harrison only played in 7 games. His 2023 campaign was much better. Same with Denzel Burke. He played in games in 2024, just didn't play too well, but his 2023 campaign much better. And then Tommy Hill from Nebraska only played in 7 games, and 2023 was much better. In terms of passer rating allowed, some of the lowest out of this list, Jade Barron at 34.2, Azrai Thomas at 50.2, Za Frazier at 39 or 35.9. Some of the lowest or worst passer ratings allowed, we have Denzel Burke 95.4, Tommy Hill 119.6, Caleb Ransall 94.1, Fenchel Cypress 98.4, Isis Waxter 97.6, Marcus Siegel 88.5. Run defense grade, some of the highest, Jade Barron 83.4. We also have Za Frazier 82, Tommy Hill 81.6, Marcus Siegel, 85.8. Some of the lower ones, Maxwell Hairston, not a great run grade, 56.8. Azariah Thomas had a 66. These are still above average, above 60. 67 for Caleb Bransall, 66 for Mac McWilliams, 69.9 for Fentrell Cypress, and 61.4 for Isis Waxter. In terms of man grades, not many high ones on here. Azariah Thomas, 71.8. Justin Wally, 70.7. Mac McWilliams, 72.5. Some low ones on this list, such as Maxwell Hairston, Denzel Burke, Tommy Hill, Caleb Bransall. Then finally, zone grades, some really high ones here. Jade Barron, 91.5. Denzel Burke, 81.0. Mac McWilliams, 80.5, a bunch in the 70s there. And then some of the lower ones, Maxwell Hairston, again, that's still above average. Justin Wally, 66.9. Fentrell Cypress, 62.9. Marcus Siegel, 61.9. And the lowest on the list was Isis Waxter at 49.4. So with all the yes and maybe threshold fits at cornerback for the Green Bay Packers, let's narrow it down. So yes, maybe threshold fits at cornerback with a good man coverage grade or a 70-plus man coverage grade are as follows. Siobhan Revell, Azariah Thomas, Trey Amos, Jason Marshall Jr., Justin Wally, Mac McWilliams, Katan Crawford. So if you think the Packers are going to try to more so transition into a man coverage priority defense, which some people think they will, they played a ton of zone last year, but a lot of people think it's because they didn't have the personnel to play the man, which definitely could be the case. So if you think they want to add more of a man coverage guy, there's your list. If they want to add more of a zone coverage corner, which is the route I think they'll take, this is yes/maybe threshold fits at corner with good zone grade, 70 plus. A lot more options here. Will Johnson, Siobhan Revell. So you see a couple, names on both lists there. Same with Trey Amos. Siobhan Revell, Jade Barron, Trey Amos, Darian Porter, Azariah Thomas, Jacob Parrish, Denzel Burke, Zoff Frazier, Tommy Hill, Caleb Bransall, Mac McWilliams, Katan Crawford. Then we have the Packers yes/maybe threshold fits with good run defense grade. We know how the Packers love their cornerbacks to be able to tackle and defend against the run. That's important. So that's a 70-plus run defense grade are as follows. Will Johnson, Siobhan Revell, Trey Amos, Jade Barron, Jacob Parrish, Benjamin Morrison, Denzel Burke, Zoff Frazier, Tommy Hill, Justin Wally, Marcus Siegel. Then we have Packers yes/maybe threshold fits at cornerback with good ball production, meaning they had 3 interceptions and allowed a sub 75 passer rating. There's only 4 out of this list. Trey Amos, Darian Porter, Jade Barron, and Zoff Frazier. Then to wrap this up, Packers yes/maybe threshold fits at cornerback with at least 3 out of these 4 categories, meaning they were on the man list, the man coverage list, the zone coverage list, the run defense list, the ball production list. They have at least 3. There's one player that's on all 4, and that is Trey Amos out of Ole Miss. Siobhan Revell's on 3, Jade Barron's on 3, and Zoff Frazier's on 3. That's the list. And one thing out of this list of 4 players is, Siobhan Revell, injury concerns this past season, lesser competition. I still think he's going to be a good player, but you do worry about that. Jade Barron, maybe you see him as just a nickel. Zoff Frazier, lesser competition, right? Playing at UTSA. Whereas Trey Amos, played at Ole Miss, doesn't have injury concerns, played a lot of ball the past 3 seasons, and played some good ball the past 3 seasons. So he's the one corner that there's negatives for all these guys, but he's the one corner that you kind of don't have that where you talk about the guy and then you go, but at the end of it, but this guy has injury issues or this guy didn't play in a lot of games last year. Where Trey Amos, he did, and he played a lot of ball the past 3 seasons. So right now, I feel like Trey Amos, will be their guy if they go corner, say in the 2nd round. Maybe they have to trade up a bit for him, but if they go corner, right now I'm really leaning Trey Amos, which is a guy I kind of, didn't do much research on too early on, or kind of underrated him. But now that I'm looking at it and looking at all the data and what the Packers like and what his game is, I'm really liking Trey Amos. So that does it for the cornerback threshold fits for the Green Bay Packers in this upcoming 2025 NFL Draft. Again, this data took a decent bit to compile, so I'd really appreciate it if you left a like down below. Let me know what position you want next. I was thinking of doing interior defensive line, as that is definitely a need for the Packers, separating it from 2 different lineman categories, the 3 to 5 tech, and then also the 0 to 1 tech, which is kind of what the Packers should be looking at after losing TJ Slayton. Let me know down in the comments below if you want, say, interior defensive line next, or maybe you want O-line, interior, or tackle. Just let me know in the comments below. Really appreciate you guys coming by. Reminder to go check out BetUS TV. Their YouTube is linked down in the description. I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching, and as always, go Packers.